looking at the sky, clouds, air. You can't see air, you breathe it. And we can't survive without it. As we all know, the air on our planet is polluted just about everywhere, mostly from automobiles. This program looks at what caused this pollution, what's being done about it, and at what needs to be done to protect ourselves and our Earth. Fact: a century ago, Gottlieb Daimler and Carl Benz made the first car. Fact: today 500 million cars inhabit the Earth. Fact: emissions from these cars pollute the air and harm the world's ozone layer. Prediction: in the next 30 years, the number of cars on Earth will double to 1 billion. And without new efforts, the Earth's air will become more polluted, and the Earth's temperature will continue to rise. But we love our cars, and we're not going to give them up. So a key question for our future survival is how we can keep driving, encourage the building of better cars, more effective government legislation, and improved driving habits, all to make a cleaner world for us and for our children. The answers to these questions are critical now. The answers lie where the rubber meets the road. You are looking at a 16th century cathedral, a monument that philosopher Roland Barthes once compared to the car. He said both were the supreme creation of their time. No invention has captured the spirit, the freedom, the mobility of the 20th century like the car. And no place in the world has ever been more in love with the car than Los Angeles. Sure, every city has car lovers, but if one city has come to be known for its car lifestyle, it's LA. And if one city has come to be known for its car pollution, it's also LA. Los Angeles became famous back in the 1970s as the smog capital of the world.
The famous Los Angeles skyline is buried somewhere underneath this layer of pollution. The Air Quality Management District predicted that smog would reach second stage levels today for the third day in a row. Now, if a third stage alert should become imminent, then all government, business, and industry would be shut down, and the 7.5 million people living in greater Los Angeles would be asked to stay at home. Will that ever come to pass? It's hard to say. We'll have to wait and watch through dry, red, irritated eyes. For News at 10, Tony Valdez.
Air pollution can cause our eyes to get red. But how exactly does it harm the Earth's atmosphere?
There are the gases like smog pollution and carbon monoxide that make you sick when you just breathe the gases. And then there's the carbon dioxide which comes out of the tailpipe, which makes the whole planet sick by changing the atmosphere.
When a car burns gas, hydrocarbons and nitrous oxides come out of the tailpipe and combine with sunlight to form smog. But there is another type of pollutant that we can't see, which is just as dangerous: carbon dioxide. It harms the ozone layer, which protects the Earth from dangerous radiation. This is called the greenhouse effect, which many scientists believe causes a phenomenon we've all heard about: global warming.
I know what's wrong with your truck. It's your quote-unquote pollution controls. I heard on talk radio you don't even need them. They're just an egghead government plot.
How is cutting down on pollution a government plot, Dale?
Open up your eyes, man. They're trying to control global warming. Get it? Global.
So what?
That's code for UN commissars telling Americans what temperature it's going to be in our outdoors. I say let the world warm up.
Cars around the world do play a major role in global warming, and global warming is harming the planet. But there was a time, not so long ago, when everything about the car seemed great. That time was the 1950s, a time when millions of young people began to use the car for fun and frolic, to rebel and to break rules. The car you drove made a statement about you. It gave others a sense of who you were. Fitted with chrome and fins, cars were designed with the young in mind. But they were really meant to appeal to a much larger group of adults who had the money to buy cars. The American family. It was said that the American dream was to have a job, a house, 2.4 kids, and a car. The bigger, the better.
Our abundance is big and comes from bigness. The bigness of our busy business. The bigness of our fields. The bigness of our fast-moving, modern America.
Back then, modern meant better and special and new, like TV dinners. It was a new way of life, filled with a love of gadgets and convenience.
Come on, kids, let's load up.
Just fold down the seat and presto, plenty of room for everything and everybody.
Pick out the newest new car in America, the new Motoramic Chevrolet. With a whole new design and bodies by Fisher, here's a revolutionary new ride and new power with the new Chevrolet Turbo Fire V8 engine and 2 new Blue Flame 6s. Here's new 4-fender visibility with Chevrolet's big new sweep side windshield. Underneath, there's a completely new chassis featuring wonderful new glide ride front suspension and new anti-dive braking control. To experience a whole new concept of
New. That's what car companies felt people liked. And they were right. Because people bought new cars in the tens of millions.
I want a Corvette.
I thought you would.
Ooh, I want a Pontiac too.
Okay, we'll have the usual 2-car garage. Let's go all out and buy a Cadillac too.
I can hardly wait for this dream to come true.
It did seem like a dream. Cars made life easier, and they created a whole new kind of business, the drive-in. Drive-in theaters, drive-in banks, drive-in churches, drive-in restaurants. The more popular cars became, the more they crowded the roads. So the federal government began to build a massive national highway system to ease up traffic and allow people to go where they needed to go. The more cars took to the roads of America, the more effect they began to have on our air, although almost nobody was aware of it. Pollution was affecting every city in America, and the most affected was Los Angeles. In about 20 years, Los Angeles had gone from this to this.
I can recall as being a student on USC's campus in 1955. The air pollution was so thick you could almost cut it with a knife.
I can remember taking a bus from Beverly Hills to downtown Los Angeles, and there was a spot where you came to near to what is now MacArthur Park, and you go up a little rise, and then you start down Wilshire Boulevard into downtown Los Angeles. And I remember looking out the bus window and saying, oh my, there's the smog.
With the sunshine of Los Angeles making its atmosphere the most ozone-laden in the world, one solution offered by the scientists was to find out which materials reacted with the sun to form ozone and to filter them out before they reached the open air. Motorcycle police tried masks, while the city launched its biggest, most desperate smog investigation.
Los Angeles smog has always intrigued the amateur inventor. One of the first suggestions, and it is constantly being repeated, is that giant fans be mounted on the rim of the basin, fans that would blow the pollution away. Unfortunately, there isn't enough electrical energy in the world to propel those fans, and if there were, the concentrated smog that they would push out would kill every living thing in its path.
Pollution was dangerous, and although Los Angeles was a prime example of it, it was happening in every city in the United States and around the world.
This was London at the peak of last December's killer smog. Torches were needed in midday to guide ambulances to the homes of the stricken. The official figures say 102 died, thousands became ill, hundreds of thousands choked, sputtered, and wheezed.
British Reserve is somewhat strained by an odd apparition on the streets of London.
While some people tried their best to live with air pollution,
It's a smog mask.
others were becoming convinced that it had to be reduced.
Here we are. You should be able to see the mountains. You should be able to see our beautiful city, but you can't see anything. And it's destroying not only our health, but our economy. From 50 to 70% of the junk that's in the air comes from our own cars, mine and yours. We've got to tune up those engines. We've got to have them inspected. If all of our cars were operating efficiently, we would have a significant reduction in all of this pollution and junk that's in the air. That's what we need to do.
Man's a filthy creature.
As a result of a very vocal few, thousands of ordinary people began to speak up. Their numbers grew, and soon millions were getting involved in the environmental movement. They were not against cars, but they knew something had to change. They got the world's attention on April 22nd, 1970, the first Earth Day.
Earth Day was everything we could possibly have hoped it would be. It was a tremendous outpouring of people. It was a moment of sheer wonder and affirmation.
The results of efforts like these by individuals and organizations forced improvement in our cars and our environment. The cities of America began getting cleaner, even Los Angeles. But Californians knew they had a long way to go before they could breathe air that did not harm them or their environment.
The significant tactics that we plan to utilize in the implementation of the plan to reduce hydrocarbon emissions.
In 1997, Californians passed an amendment that challenged the auto industry, requiring that by the year 2003, 10% of all cars sold in California be pollution-free. Hobbyists and scientists and car companies and students have taken on this challenge. To understand what they are doing, you must first understand the car and its engine, the much-loved and sometimes hated internal combustion engine.
O engine so grand, built of our human hand, true muscle of steel, your powers unreal. Your spark plugs wait for the gas that's their bait, with valves open wide, which in one great stride let in the fuel that powers the car that replaced the mule. Combustion, combustion, fuel mixes with air that sparked by a flame explodes with great flare. And out comes fire, pushing pistons to go up and down, down and up, down, up. And the crankshaft cranks, turning wheel to wheel, and the mighty car moves, making our freedom real. This poem is here to honor you so, for eternally keeping us on the go.
I know what's wrong with it. It's a Ford. You know what they say Ford stands for, don't you? It stands for fix it again, Tony.
You're thinking of a Fiat, Dale.
Fix it again.
I'll tell you what you do. You just take them dang old spark plugs out, and in that little hole, you just put a little oil around there, just like Bobby Unser said. It's like it'd go boom, boom, just like that.
Well, I wish it were that simple, Boomhauer.
Hank is right. The internal combustion engine is not simple, but it is amazing.
I mean, when you think of a comparison of an automobile to anything else, whether you buy a television set or a kitchen or anything else, it's an incredible machine with technology that is space age. There was a time here in the 30s where you had to have a valve job every 10,000 miles. And you were lucky if you could take a weekend trip without changing at least one tire. That has changed completely.
The car engine has been steadily changing. But to understand how, you have to know a little more about it.
Well, we have 2 cylinder heads for this engine. We'll take the cylinder heads. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put the core plug in the end of it.
This is Jim Brown. He understands engines. Jim is one of the few people around who can still put an engine together from memory. Just watch. You know, a car engine has 20,000 parts. That's 5 times as many parts as a jet engine. Of course, when Jim Brown was young, more people could do this, no sweat. But maybe that's because the engine was a lot simpler then, before computers and fuel injectors and overhead camshafts. This is a 6-cylinder engine. You can see its cylinders. This is a crankshaft. Each time the crankshaft turns, which is 40 times per second, 6 explosions occur. Think about it. That's 240 explosions per second, all encased in this piece of metal. It's powerful and it's safe. Most of us, as we are driving, never think about the incredible engine that's beneath the hood of our cars.
Okay, what we have here is a finished engine ready to be installed in a vehicle.
There was a time not so long ago when many boys, and some girls too, could take an engine apart and name its pieces. For 99% of us, those days are gone. But every once in a while, you'll find a group like this. Students who are driven to learn how to make engines that are powerful and clean.
This is the intake. Well, this is the intake manifold here. This is where the air goes into the engine we were talking about earlier. And of course, everybody's familiar with their air cleaner that they should also service when they get a tune-up.
When they're driving dust.
And the air cleaner is over underneath.
In this box. And the air comes around the bottom of the box, comes in, and this computer piece senses the air coming through into the intake. As the piston rises in the cylinder on compression stroke, the spark plug will fire. The spark plug is here, deep in the cylinder head, so that it's exposed in the combustion chamber, and this is the spark plug wire.
So this is the spark plug wire, which comes back here to our distributor. Once the fuel and the air mix together in the correct ratio, get in the combustion chamber, then the spark plug is going to spark and ignite the fuel air mixture, which produces the heat.
The power. Move the piston down.
Move the piston down. And we put the ball in, and that's like our piston in the cylinder. And just to make it safe for everybody, we'll put this little tube over because we're going to generate some pressure in there. So now we hit the spark, and so the ball being forced out of the cylinder represents the piston being forced down in the cylinder, exerting pressure on the crankshaft, turning the crankshaft, which turns the transmission, which ultimately turns the rear wheels. We have to clear the exhaust gas out of the cylinder, like we did out there, so we have compressed air, and that's going to drive all the burned gases out of the cylinder, just like the piston going up on the exhaust. You can smell the hydrocarbon vapors.
What these students and Professor Sullivan are talking about demonstrate the problem. Burning fuel in the engine moves the piston and then the crankshaft, which moves the car. But the fuel is not all burned. Something is left over. The exhaust, the emission. And what comes out of the tailpipe affects every living thing on the planet, and the planet itself.
What is gasoline made out of?
Oil.
Oil, but we want to get down to what it really is.
Carbon.
Carbon is one
hydrogen.
Of them. Hydrogen, that's the other one. Gasoline is a hydrocarbon, not oxygen yet. That's oxygenated fuels, that's alcohol. Gasoline is just H for carbon. Hydrogen.
Hydrogen.
And C for
carbon.
That's what it is. So when hydrogen combines with oxygen, it produces
On.
water, actually water. When carbon combines with oxygen, we want it to produce
CO2.
CO2. This is what we call
Complete combustion.
Combustion.
That's what we want.
Complete combustion. This is what we want to come out of the tailpipe of the car. And this is what we work so hard with our electronic fuel injection, electronic spark timing, 4 valves per cylinder, engine design, to try to have all of this happen in the combustion chamber. But it doesn't, because life's not
perfect.
So we
always
don't
a catch.
always get perfect, complete combustion. Things go wrong.
When you burn fossil fuel, especially in an internal combustion engine, some of the fuel isn't completely burned. And some of what is not completely burned comes out of the tailpipe as what's called hydrocarbon. And the hydrocarbon builds up in the air, and in the presence of sunlight and warm temperature, gets cooked in a chemical reaction in the atmosphere into smog, ozone smog. And when you breathe ozone smog, it is an acute toxin to the lung.
About 1 out of 2 Americans live in areas which do not meet healthy air standards. About 64,000 Americans die prematurely every year from exposure to air pollution. And motor vehicles make up about 50% of the emissions of air pollution in our most polluted areas.
We've now seen in about 20 different cities in North America associations between daily changes in how much carbon monoxide is in the air and people coming into hospitals with congestive heart failure.
Up in here is the exhaust manifold coming down to the exhaust pipe, and we mentioned that the exhaust gases eventually get to the catalytic converter, which is where we're going to reduce the final emissions that we couldn't take care of in the engine. In the engine, not all the gasoline got burned, the hydrocarbons. And some of the carbon atoms didn't burn completely. They formed carbon monoxide instead of carbon dioxide. And we did the best job we could in the engine to get them to burn, but some of them make it into the exhaust pipe and get down here to the catalytic converter. In the catalytic converter, in the presence of the catalyst, which is in probably this one is platinum or palladium, the hydrocarbons are encouraged to burn. Estimates say it's reduced emissions by 80% of a 1974 car that didn't have a catalytic converter to a car that has a catalytic converter. And the new cars, I mean, we have cars now that are called zero-emission vehicles because under 90% of their operating range, they're producing no pollutants.
The catalytic converter does substantially reduce air pollution, but to make certain that it and the engine are doing their job, every state in the United States has emission inspection stations. This is Bob Cerullo's station in Brooklyn, New York. His responsibility? To make sure that engine emissions are clean enough to meet legal air quality standards.
To demonstrate the importance of emissions, what we really brought together here is a 1954 Cadillac and a 1998 Acura, because the transition from a 1954 to a 1998, there's a tremendous amount of technical advances that have gone on. This car is, of course, state-of-the-art 1998. It's got everything you can imagine to control emissions, including computerized fuel injection. If you take a look into the engine compartment, you can see how simple things are. No air pump, no catalytic converter, a minimum of devices to control emissions. Let me put this pipe in right now.
To be legal in the state of New York, this car cannot emit more than 220 hydrocarbons per million.
To pass in New York State is 1.2 and 220 parts per million of hydrocarbon.
This car passes just barely. Now let's see how much cleaner the emissions are from a new car that has a catalytic converter and a fuel-injected engine.
Now that the catalytic converter has lit off, the hydrocarbons are 19, 18, and descending, and the carbon monoxide is 0.02, which is almost no carbon monoxide. I think you might have trouble trying to commit suicide with this car. You'd probably have to go and grab the tire iron whack yourself on the head or it wouldn't go down. For a lot of people, emission testing is an annoyance. But one of the pluses is it's almost like taking a temperature reading. Temperature reading on your body will always kind of trigger this, to indicate that there's something wrong. And the whole purpose is to keep those gases, hydrocarbon, carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, sulfuric acid in some cases, from coming out of the tailpipe and eventually winding up in the ozone layer and affecting the ozone layer. Or in addition, it comes down in the form of acid rain. And I think most conscientious mechanics want to see that not only are they getting good performance, but they want to be within emission levels. Our best shot is internal combustion engines with the kind of emission controls that we have today. And as you can see by the readings, to take another look at the readings here, we're down to 0.3 or 4 hydrocarbons, 4 parts per million. The limit is 220, so this is a really clean car. I'm sold on the internal combustion engine. I think they've done wonderful things with it, and I mean, it's just incredible, the transition from only 1954 to 1998. This incredible change in emissions it's just fantastic. We have the 1998 Chrysler Sebring LXI, which is a brand new model and a car that I'm anxious to drive. It just came in and I haven't really had a chance to drive it yet. One of the thoughts I always have is to try to drive as if you had an egg between your foot and the gas pedal and the brake pedal. For example, one of these accelerations may be a lot of fun, but it's really not very good for the car, and it certainly isn't good for fuel economy.
Like Bob Cerullo just said, to burn less fuel, you can put an egg under your gas pedal. Or you can design an engine that burns less fuel by getting more miles from a gallon of gas.
The amount of gas that a car guzzles is directly related to the amount of pollution that comes out of the tailpipe. And that within our children's lifetime, the cars that we're driving are changing the atmosphere on Earth, and that is going to change and has begun to change, according to the scientists, the climate here on Earth, a phenomenon called global warming. And it's a major threat to our future and to our children's future. Within our children's lifetime, it will change how high the seas are, how severe the storms are, how much infectious disease comes into our country, whether forests that are currently up will be able to survive where they're growing. The biggest single step we can take to curb global warming is to make our cars and light trucks go further on a gallon of gas.
This is a championship car race. You wouldn't think race car drivers would care how many miles they get from a gallon of gas, but they do. The more miles they can squeeze out of the fuel in their tanks, the better chance they have of crossing the finish line first. Because whenever they stop to refuel, they're forced to lose precious time off the track. By pushing engines to their limit on the racetrack, engineers are learning how to increase an engine's fuel efficiency.
There's a lot to do with electronics. There's a lot to do with the actual physical shape of parts and airflow within the engine. It's an extreme and exacting science.
And the result of this science is used by engineers around the world to build more fuel-efficient cars for ordinary drivers.
Mauricio Gugelmin leads them across the start-finish stripe. 2 laps to go.
You've been watching the 1997 Detroit Grand Prix. One of the teams competing is Pac West, led by former first-place winners Mark Blundell and Mauricio Gugelmin. They were both expected to win. Blundell and Gugelmin had so much faith in their engineers, and most importantly in their engines, that they astonished everyone by attempting to squeeze the last 30 extra miles out of a tank of gas without having to stop and refuel.
Detroit's a tough racetrack. It's difficult for us to get around and do the amount of laps on the amount of fuel that are allocated.
Final lap of the Detroit Grand Prix. Gugelmin and Blundell. Could they go 1 and 2 today for Pac West? 2 miles to go. Do they have enough fuel?
The last lap, they give you the white flag. My computer said that I had consumed 36.5 gallons. My car only takes 35, so I knew I was already 1.5 gallons on the red.
Gugelmin slows. Blundell bursts into the lead as his teammate slows out of fuel. It's all in the hands of Mark Blundell. Blundell in the middle of the racetrack, defensive position, and Blundell slows. Moore is in the lead. Blundell is out of fuel. Is it possible that first and second place run out of fuel on the last lap. And there is Mark Blundell, who rolls to a stop that far from the checkered flag. And he throws the steering wheel out of the car. The frustration is all world for Mark Blundell.
We had a small splutter and that was it, out of fuel. We were like a pint of fuel minus on the scale. If we'd have had just like, a couple of cupfuls of fuel, we'd have been across the line and probably won the race.
Mark Blundell didn't win this race, but advances in race car engines by people like Blundell have improved fuel efficiency. Today, a typical car gets 25 to 30 miles a gallon, and every major car company is now working to design engines that will get 50, 60, and even 80 miles to a gallon. But will even this be enough? Gas is, after all, a natural resource that will dry up. And no matter how fuel efficient a car becomes, the fuel it burns will still harm the earth. So is there an alternative to the gasoline engine?
The internal combustion engine driven by gasoline has turned out to be surprisingly resilient. We made it burn a little bit less gasoline, we made it work cleaner, and then the price of gasoline fell. So here we are, 20 years after everybody said, we're running out of oil, we got to do something, still running on oil.
It doesn't make sense to just try to tweak around with the internal combustion engine to get slightly increased fuel economy or slightly lower emissions. At some point, we have to look at, are the investments worth it anymore? And we have to look at abandoning the internal combustion engine. We have to ask ourselves, is this the time?
We know that there's going to be a point at which, no matter how clean we get the engine, it's still too much pollution, especially in our congested cities, especially with people loving to drive, wanting to go place to maintain that personal mobility. And he was suggesting, and I think quite rightly, that we're going to see other forms of prime movers come in.
Today, every major car company is building an electric vehicle, or EV, and some are already being sold.
Blue Meanie it's kind of a Blue Meanie. It's a nice car, but it's kind of a Blue Meanie because unsuspecting Camaro V8s and Mustangs kind of get eaten alive by this car. So it's kind of a mean little electric that's got some spunk to it.
This is John Wayland, a builder of electric cars. John builds EVs by himself right out of his garage. He's one of those true believers who is committed to finding an alternative to the internal combustion engine.
The first time I hit it, we burned rubber all the way out the driveway with the tires smoking. It twisted the drive line, cracked the transmission in half, and came to rest out in the street with all this fluid. I was going, oh, right, this is great! Because I had no idea it had that much power.
John is an inventor who put his money where his mouth is. This old Datsun is one of his cars. He removed its gas engine and replaced it with an electric one.
What's interesting about the electric car, because of the torque of the electric motor, you don't have to shift. This car is spirited and fun, but you can take off in high gear if you'd like. You can take off in second gear, third gear. You can drive it like an automatic, or you can use the gears. And this particular car is performance-oriented, so I like to use the gears because it's more fun. You get a little bit better acceleration that way. This is the voltage of my main traction pack, which shows that we've got lots of power. And this is the voltage of the accessory system, the 12-volt, for the headlights, the horn, the wipers, and of course the sound system. The car is on, and yet there is no noise. Nothing's running, nothing's throbbing, spewing out emissions, heat. It's pretty unique.
We're on right now?
We're on right now.
I hear nothing.
You hear nothing. And then we just step on the accelerator. We start moving. Silently, of course. When you come to a stop, all you can hear is the other cars making lots of noise. I can tell you it cost about 1/5 of what it costs to run a gasoline car. It cost me about 30 cents to fill this up for 30 miles of driving. So compared to the cost of gasoline, that's about 1/3 to 1/4. But then there's the issue of zero maintenance. There's really nothing to do to this car. There's no antifreeze, no oil, No filters, no tune-ups, no spark plugs, no mufflers. Heck, there isn't even an exhaust system. Love it. And it always runs the same. Whether it's snowing outside or it's sunny like today, it always runs good. It always has full power. Altitude doesn't affect it. Temperature doesn't affect the way the motor performs. Electric vehicles are really wonderful. It's, I always tell people, once you've driven in an EV, you'll never go back. And that's the way I feel about it.
As attractive as electric cars might seem, the picture isn't perfect.
The electric car gives up some of the flexibility you and I take for granted, like the ability to refuel it quickly, the ability to refuel it anywhere, the ability to drive it from here to God knows where on no notice at all. You can't do that in an electric.
The laundryman that used to pick up my father's white shirts had an electric truck, and they do have a great advantage. But one of the things with the problems with electric vehicles, and I recall Lee Iacocca saying at the International Motor Press Association dinner not too long ago, when he went to work for the Ford Motor Company as a young engineer, they had an electric vehicle. The biggest problem was they didn't have a battery. Now that he was retiring from the Chrysler Corporation, they have a wonderful electric vehicle. The big problem was they don't have an efficient battery.
Although most electric cars have no tailpipe because they don't have emissions from the vehicle, there's a smokestack somewhere that is emitting often coal, although in California more likely natural gas, in order to generate the electricity to run the car. So zero emission is a little bit of a misnomer, but certainly the vehicle itself is zero emission. And it's a step along the path.
It's kind of funny how people are, well, don't you have to plug it in? Like it's a big deal. And I always go, gee, I think it's a lot bigger deal to go to a gas station, get up from your house, drive somewhere, and pay some slob to pour gasoline over the side of your car. You know, no, this is really, really hard. Watch this. Really tough. You take the power cord, and you plug it in, you walk away. Car's now on charge. And we're drawing 11 amps out of the wall. That's about what a hairdryer would draw.
But it does take John 8 hours to fully charge this EV's batteries.
Let's face it, today's motor car is very good. The electric vehicle or the hybrid car is not competing against replacing a horse and wagon. It's competing against a very good internal combustion car. Very affordable, meets all my needs, it's wonderful.
John Whalen knows enough about EVs to turn just about any car into one. You're about to see him take this old Datsun, powered by an internal combustion engine, and perform what some call magic.
This is what we call a diamond in the rough. This is a 1968 Datsun pickup that should be ready for the scrap heap. You can hear it's got a blown muffler, it's got exhaust leaks, but it's a cute, cool truck, and we're gonna turn it into something special. Right now, it's not that special. We have an old tech battery all full of corrosion. We have a greasy motor. So at the end of the day, we're going to have an electric powered truck. Another nasty internal combustion engine component that's not needed. There it is. This is the happy moment when you go from greasy mess to refined, quiet power. This has one moving part. It has an armature that spins around, and that's it. Man, I need one of these hoists. Yeah.
So we're getting close to it?
Real close. Negative, positive, negative, positive. It's no longer internal combustion. Ready to roll.
We've turned the corner and we're underway. The electric vehicle is here.
She's alive!
It's come out of the garage and it's going down the road.
All right! This time around, with the big players involved, GM, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Ford, Chrysler, all building them. It's not a pipe dream anymore. This isn't like pie in the sky. We will have electric cars that go 250 and 300 miles on a charge, that don't weigh like a battleship, that have room for your family, that accelerate well, that brake well, that do everything a gas power does.
car does except for pollute.
I think there are some people who are less afraid of technology and care a lot about the environment, and those are the ones that we see purchasing electric vehicles today. For others, when the supply becomes greater, when the technology matures a little bit more, I think other people will jump into the market and purchase an electric vehicle or a fuel cell vehicle or a hybrid vehicle.
A hybrid vehicle. It's another alternative to the internal combustion engine. This is the finish line of the 1997 Future Car Competition run by the Department of Energy, which challenged college engineering students around the country to build a car whose engine could get 80 miles on a gallon of gas. The students who entered this competition came from some of the country's best engineering schools: the University of Michigan, Northridge, the University of Illinois, the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and the University of California at Davis. The competition was stiff, but one type of car in particular was a likely winner: the hybrid. It carries a gas engine and an electric engine side by side, both controlled by a sophisticated computer which decides how best to balance the gas power with the electric power. It's all designed to burn less fuel.
We have a compressed natural gas engine.
In picking the winner, judges look not only for the car that could get closest to 80 miles to a gallon, but for the car with the best overall design and performance.
This now enables us to go 37 miles with our current battery pack, pure electric, which gives us the ZEV credits in LA.
Basically, we've got an electric drivetrain controlled by a custom-built microprocessor by one of our students, and automatically determines when the engine needs to come on, what speed to run it at, holds it at that speed, and then shuts it off when it's done.
Very good. If you have a chance to see the silver car with the hood up from UC Davis, you'll see the composite materials in the hood, the trunk, etc. The electric motors, which I think are on almost all of the vehicles. There was one using compressed natural gas.
I have a great deal of respect for all of you. You are the future of the auto industry, and there are thousands, many tens of thousands of us that certainly care about what you're doing as you enter the auto industry going forward.
1997 challenge, number one in competition with some extraordinarily fine competitors with a score of 830 points. That's batting 830 out of 1,000. Is University of California, Davis.
When the UC Davis team took first place, it was a dream come true. But these students didn't rest on their victory. They immediately set out to build an even better car for the 1999 competition. In this effort, they're led by their professor, Dr. Andy Frank.
The hybrid automobile is a concept in which uses both electricity and gasoline. Now, many of the car companies have used the concept of hybrid to improve efficiency, but we in California here are using the hybrid to not only improve efficiency, but simultaneously to take people off using gasoline to using electricity.
Right here, this is the powertrain. This is the electric motor, and it drives the wheels through this belt into the transmission. This is a normal 5-speed transmission. This is the gasoline engine, which can be coupled to the transmission through a clutch right in this area. So we can drive as a pure electric vehicle, or we can couple the engine in and drive as a hybrid, therefore extending the range of the vehicle to a 300 to 400 mile range.
Our objective is 80 miles per gallon. We've gotten 50 miles per gallon. So what we want to do is get higher fuel economy, so we have to reduce the weight. And so comes this car. Now this car is completely made out of aluminum. Currently it's a 94 Sable, Mercury Sable, but by the time we're finished with it, it'll be a 1998 or 1999 Ford Taurus, and it won't look anything like it currently looks. We don't charge with gasoline, but on the highway, this car can still go 1,000 miles on one charge. And one way to translate that is we can go from here, Sacramento, to Los Angeles, 400 miles away, up over mountains, and back on the same charge. So That's almost beyond the capability of human endurance for driving one day.
There's also the aspect of you know that you have a finite source of crude oil around. I mean, we don't have many more dinosaurs which are roaming the earth and dying and getting crushed down there to produce this stuff. So, you know, it's just a matter of how long will it be before this stuff goes out. You know, you can't find it. And so just a concept of being able to, extend that supply longer by going up to 80 miles per gallon is a great deal.
We're the engineers of the future. And right now, we're in the automotive community learning and building vehicles. And I feel that's important. And also, we're working on technologies that will be prominent in the future.
We're pushing the technology, I think, to some extent. We don't have the leverage that governments and the big automakers have, but in our own way, I think we are making a difference.
You're now in New York City, a driving nightmare, but a great place to test new kinds of cars. You're about to see another alternative to an internal combustion engine. Not an electric, not a hybrid, something else. Meet Silvio Martinez, a typical New York City cab driver. Except for one thing. When he fills up the tank in his cab, it isn't with regular gasoline. Silvio uses something different.
Smith! Yeah, you need gas. What is this cup? What is it? Electricity?
No, this is natural gas.
Natural gas. Natural gas.
That's right, natural gas. The same type of gas some people use to heat their homes and cook their food. Silvio's taxi has been especially built to run on natural gas. He's part of a growing effort to use it. And why not?
Okay. Okay, bye-bye.
It's cheap, and it is 50% less polluting than regular gasoline.
Anjo.
Yes.
Do you know that you're running on a car or a CNG car, compressor natural gas car?
Sounds good to me.
Who doesn't run on gasoline?
You sure we're gonna make it all the way there?
Every 2,000.
Tune-ups.
And tune-up
What
every
about the
2,000.
tune-ups? Tune-ups the same?
I can go 100,000 miles in this car. I pay for a gallon of gasoline about $1.50.
Right.
Using natural gas, you know how much I use? How much I pay?
How much?
$1.15.
So maintaining the vehicle alone, you don't have to put so much effort as you do with gasoline.
Right. You got that one right.
I lived in London for several years, and the air there was so bad, and the reason for that was that all the taxis are diesel.
You're making a profit.
Yes.
It's healthy for the environment and for the planet.
Yes. Keep going.
Nothing's
Wow.
up on there.
It's just like
steam. It's
Steam, yeah.
Absolutely. You smell it. Nothing's coming out.
Wow.
Now smell it. It's nothing's coming.
I like that.
He didn't have to make any radical changes to use natural gas in his car. He still has to go to a gas station. So if natural gas is so great, why aren't we all driving around in natural gas vehicles? One obvious drawback, if you take a look in the trunk, is space. Natural gas tanks take up a lot of room. You'd think a cabbie would have a real problem with that.
I don't mind having enough space in the trunk because you have to give something in order to receive. I'm receiving a lot of incentive on the car using natural gas. It's cheaper to maintain the car. It's going to cost me less money. For that reason, I give him something. I give him half of the space that I have in the trunk.
Natural gas looks great on paper. It runs very well in cold weather because it doesn't have to turn to a gas. It is a gas. We have a lot of natural gas in this country. But if you go out and buy a car that will run only on natural gas and you want to drive it across country, you'll starve to death before you make it.
Another reason natural gas cars have had a hard time selling is that many people think they're unsafe. They fear that a natural gas tank could explode.
Are we any more likely to blow up if someone runs into us?
No. We are...
Less likely?
No. Don't think about explode or something like that.
It's New York. I'm in a taxi after all.
Absolutely, but this is safe, very safe.
One thing Silvio learned to trust is the safety of his natural gas tanks. Because something happened to him while out driving. Something scary.
Just before 9 Thursday morning, bus driver Charles Alston lost control behind the wheel. Unconscious but still accelerating, he drove the bus down Fifth Avenue, barreling into a lamppost, taxicab, a bicyclist, and a delivery man before crashing to a stop in this corner store. All that was left was mangled wreckage.
I stepped out from the car and walked about 5 feet from the door of the car. In my back, a city bus lost control, hitting down Fifth Avenue, and the bus was traveling about 75 miles per hour when they hit the car and brought the car about 1 block away. The whole body of the car is destroyed, but all the tank are the same. Nothing happened to the tanks.
Because it is a vapor, not a liquid like regular gasoline, natural gas is stored under intense pressure that could spell trouble. But tank manufacturers believe that they've taken care of that problem.
Natural gas cylinders are very durable. They're made out of thick steel, they're covered with fiberglass, and we test them through all kinds of dramatic tests. They'll go through bonfires, we shoot bullets at them, they survive all of that. We joke around in the office that when all of us are gone and the world is populated by cockroaches, they'll be sharing that world with natural gas cylinders because they'll still be here.
The electric vehicle, the hybrid, the natural gas vehicle, more fuel-efficient internal combustion engines, engines that emit less pollution. All of these technologies serve to make things better, but they must get better still. We're back in Los Angeles again, at its Air Quality Management headquarters. LA is cleaner than it once was, but is it clean enough? This is Dr. Rudy Eden, who tests the quality of the air in Los Angeles every 24 hours. The people of LA depend on him and what he's doing to protect their health.
This sampler here is one of several that we have in the LA basin. We have 32 monitoring stations in the basin, and this particular one has been sampling for a 24-hour period. And what we'll do is we'll take it out of here and replace it with a clean white filter. And there's the differential. This is the amount of material that you'll get in the air over a typical 24-hour period. It's not necessarily what you want to see in the air, but it's what we have here in the LA area. These filters, when we've sampled probably 10 or 15 years ago, typically came out very, very dark, almost black. We don't see that anymore. These filters really have gotten a lot cleaner as the years have gone by, and pollution control has really worked out for us. These particles technically are called PM 2.5. In more reasonable terms that you and I can understand, they're about a 25th of the diameter of a human hair, so they are very, very fine. The interest is because these will get lodged in your lungs, and they do have health impacts. In fact, I remember when I was a kid in the 60s, I would drive in from out in the desert area, and I'd actually have my eyes water by the time we hit LA. That doesn't happen anymore, so it has improved.
What goes on inside this catalytic converter is really quite exciting to people.
Things have improved, and you've just seen a few of the hundreds of thousands of people who have made this happen. But the challenges remain great. The time is short, and of course, it's not just up to them, it's also up to us.
One of the problems that auto industry faces is that it appears that Americans really don't care about fuel economy. And it's not irrational for them not to care about fuel economy when gasoline is cheaper than water in the United States.
People don't value fuel economy. They value size and acceleration. So we've now got things like a sport utility vehicle that will accelerate as fast as a Corvette did 15 years ago. They tend to buy the car for the maximum event, the annual drive to visit the in-laws in Florida, towing the boat, whatever. And the other 364 days of the year drive around with more car than they need. People will buy dolphin-free tuna or toilet paper made from recycled paper, make other small compromises that may involve a few dollars or small lifestyle changes like bothering to haul the recycling out in the blue bin on Monday mornings for the truck. But they're less prone to make big compromises in their automobiles.
Someday you won't be able to give away an internal combustion engine, and people will say, oil? What would I do with oil? I can't drink it. I can't make anything with it. God forbid I should want to burn it. We're not there yet. We got to get there. And yes, the day will come when you can't give away fossil fuels. But in order to get to that day, we have to make sure we don't destroy the planet first by doing the things that we can do today.